You have to bring them to the ground and you have to say, you are smart, but smartness doesn't carry the world always. Might surprise, but one of the best advice I got from my mother-in-law. Everyone listens selectively to one's mother-in-law. If I notice someone, I latch onto them. So that switch, to me, is the switch which makes me oblivious and makes me jump the cliff.
How does a leader turn people to believe in a cause?
I think to make people believe, you need to have two important things. One, you need to have the conviction yourself. And second is, you need to have the ability to communicate it very simply to people. I think we are remarkable as human beings. We understand stories a lot better than we understand messages or sermons.
And what would be the three most defining problems that leaders need to solve for in the coming decade?
I think first of all, leaders have to solve for their purpose, the purpose and impact. Second is, how do you create an inclusive organization? And third is, how do you stay on the right side of ethics? Leaders have to look at these three aspects very, very carefully.
And how should leaders today measure success?
I think a very traditional way to evaluate CEOs is by the value they create. However, what gets underrated is one, how many leaders they have created. Second is, how have they impacted the ecosystem? Like Steve Jobs said, are you making a dent in the universe or not? In your own small way, are you making that dent or not in the ecosystem? And third is, are you carrying your people along? The fourth thing which matters a lot is, how much do you understand technology and its impact? A lot of CEOs are here and now, they're building businesses, not realizing that in the next 4 to 5 years, their businesses could get massively disrupted.
What do you think AI is doing to leaders and leadership? Is it going to make things more humane or automated going forward?
Recognizing the role of AI, examining possibilities of how that could impact your industry, and how do you make your organization ready, how prepared are your people for that, letting people know that that would be a massive change in their lives, and hence they have to reskill themselves for what an AI-enabled world would look like.
And how does a leader make great minds or prima donnas work together?
The first thing is to explain to people, however intelligent they are, that they are better off collaborating as opposed to acting alone. Second thing which you have to tell them, success, whichever way they look at it, is momentary, and they have to realize every day, every week, every year is a fresh start. The highest quality people, you have to bring them to the ground and you have to say, you are smart, but smartness doesn't carry the world always.
Ranu, a quick line on a superstar who's culturally misaligned or an average performer who's culturally aligned. Who do you pick?
You need to have superstars. The effort, as you said, leadership is all about aligning these superstars to your common aim. The average person who's aligned to an organization can work very well in a process-based setup. But you need the stars.
How should a CEO give feedback?
I think I would like to give an anecdote here. When KKR invested in our company, I had the good fortune of meeting George Roberts, who's one of the co-founders of the organization. And sitting in his lovely office in the Silicon Valley, I asked him the same question. And the first thing you have to do is you have to take the feedback away from being a judgment on an individual. So the first thing is you have to bring yourself, while giving feedback, on the same side of the table as the individual you are giving feedback to, because however smart you are, it is the listening of the party on the other side which matters a lot more to you. Give very objective feedback. Simplify the message. Be extremely sensitive about negative attributes, and then hope that the individual is listening to you and will take some of it back. Have very, very modest aims on how many things you can change in an individual.
Do you think the world is adopting something from Indian CEOs on leadership?
If you were to look at the sheer number of companies globally which are now led by people of Indian origin, there is a substantial number. So there is something we are doing right. There is that hunger and aspiration to do something large. We have diversity and consensus building built as part of our toolkit. For most Indian CEOs, their understanding of diversity is a lot higher, I would think. If there were a diversity quotient DQ, I think that the DQ would be far higher for a lot of Indian CEOs. There was a book I read which talked about how actually a CEO's job sometimes tends to be like a rubber ball with a lot of elastic bands kind of all over it. It's all tense. There are pressures coming from different sides. It's how you manage and what decision making you have despite those pressures, which makes sure that you are not a disjointed rubber ball and you are a rubber ball which bounces and does well. So I think Indian CEOs are their ability to handle diverse stakeholders, views, bring together consensus, and move an organization towards a common goal, I think is good.
What would be one pertinent advice that you would give a young founder who has just raised funding?
I think play for the long term and do your own thing. As a young CEO, there will be a lot of people older than you who would like to tell you that this is the wisdom of the world, but there are a lot of problems, even people who are advising you do not understand themselves.
And how does Ranu Vohra run an effective meeting?
First of all, minimize meetings. Second, make sure there's adequate preparation which goes before the meetings. The agendas are clearly known. And third, document what comes out of the meetings.
And what's the one trait of a good leader that you wish you had more of?
I think I could have done better in execution and managing all aspects around execution and understanding all aspects around execution.
What's the most useful leadership advice you ever received? Who did it come from? What did they tell you?
It might surprise, but one of the best advice I got, which was unrelated to leadership, was from my mother-in-law. Everyone listens selectively to one's mother-in-law, but she, both by her conduct and otherwise, just treat people as they are. Do not develop any animosity or any special love, and just take the issue at hand rather than the people. And
do you have a favorite failure of yours?
We had good opportunity to create a largish play in offshore asset management, but not all went to plan. So I think personally it was something which I was keen to work and keen to correct, but it took much longer.
How do you deal with criticism as a leader?
First of all, like to differentiate between my immediate reaction, which is a fight or flight reaction. I'll walk away from a meeting if there is a criticism and reflect on it and think about what I need to do to make myself better. I think criticism should be taken very seriously. The immediate reaction should be different from what you actually feel about it the night later.
What's your simple version of power in an organization?
Power in an organization is your ability to influence people and persuade people to do something useful.
The one trait that you look for in leaders at your company?
Ability to collaborate and stay in a team.
How can an entrepreneur face giant companies?
To jump off a cliff, if you keep thinking, very often you will not take the decision because you want to make sure you have a parachute and you have this and you have that. But very often life is about taking those flights and hoping that you have a parachute on your back. And I think that's what matters. So that switch to me is the switch which makes me oblivious and makes me jump the cliff. That switch, when I turn off, makes me oblivious to how large an entity is on the other side. So when we started, there were enough giants, we were supposed to compete against. If I had spent time brooding over how I would tackle that, we would have never made the firm the way it is. So I turned off the switch. I said, I am what I am. These organizations we are fighting, we are equals. My message to the leadership was, giant companies were your size several decades back. So you have a chance, but you have to be 2x better than the party on the other side. So believe in creating that 2x better talent and quality.
What's your proudest moment where you felt that Ranu's leadership really made a difference to a situation or crisis?
I think I would like to go back into history. 2009, when the Satyam fiasco hit the market. So the proudest moment was when in under 100 days, in a company which was scam-ridden, which was regulated not just in India but also in the US, we were able to find a solution. And that solution worked well in the most ethical, most transparent manner.
Who is inspiring you right now?
In my mind, there's no better teacher, no better God than nature.
Ranu, who's been the greatest influence on you as an entrepreneur?
There is one person who has taught me how some of these issues have to be tackled. It's Deepak Parekh.
Ranu is the sum of which three people in his career journey?
My wife has had a very critical role to play in my life as an entrepreneur. My fellow co-founders Gaurav and Kaushal have had a significant role. And then mentors like Deepak Parekh have had a role to play.
If you could trade places with anyone in any industry today, who would it be?
One person who I have come to deeply respect, it's Nitin Kamath at Zerodha.
Is there a leader from a different space that you are looking up to right now?
I like Elon Musk.
If you were in my seat and had to put somebody in yours, who would it be and what would you ask them?
Given my love for physics, there's a company called Physics Wala, which is a bootstrapped. I'm just fascinated by the story of that company.
Is there any leader you regret losing touch with?
Actually, none. I don't let leaders slip by. If I notice someone, I latch onto them.
Ranu, if you had a gigantic billboard out there, what is the message you would put out to millions and why?
I think the message would be entrepreneurs rule, because entrepreneurs against all odds start businesses, which creates such a huge impact on society overall.
The hardest thing about being a CEO is?
About having so many diverse agendas to address.
One thing you've learned never to do as a leader.
Pamper to people's ego.
One thing you've learned always to do as a leader.
Carry your team along.
If you had the power to eliminate one thing from your workday, what would it be?
Messaging.
The first thing Ranu does in the morning, the last thing he does at night.
First thing is my run and my workout routine. The last thing I've never registered because it's seamless for me as I go into sleep.
What's been on your to-do list for the longest time?
To build a hobby, apart from what I have, to be a better programmer, for instance.
Your most prized possession is?
All my marathon medals.
What do you imagine people or employees would have gossiped about you?
Where is he?
What are you reading right now?
Lincoln Highway, Mortals.
A tech founder you really admire?
Nitin Kamath at Zerodha.
After your smartphone, what's the one gadget you can't live without?
My smartwatch.
The Avendus value which speaks to you the most?
Excellence.
Your favorite workday time waster?
Agenda-less internal meetings.
Next level is the only level. So what's next for Ranu?
Professionally, help Avendus stay as a leader, and personally, to probably do 2 marathons a year. 2
people on your Avendus Dream Advisory Board?
Elon Musk, Deepak Parekh. If I had ever an option, my all-time icon has been Steve Jobs.
Baddie versus Kaushal or poker versus Gaurav?
I'd probably do slightly better in Baddie.
Back in the deal room of Satyam Tech Mahindra or night out with the boys at IIT Delhi?
Very hard choice, but I would give anything to be back in the deal room.
Startup days at Avendus, post KKR funding days, or today? When did you get the fewest hours of sleep?
Maybe today.
Thank you very, very much for this. It was absolutely delightful.
Thank you.
Yeah, sit, relax, put me at ease.
I hope there was something new. I'm not sure how many of the leaders you work with are on Instagram. I'm not.